Developing a competency framework. You probably familiar now with the phrase of what get measured, get done. Defining and measuring effectiveness, especially the performance of workers, is a critical part of our job as a manager. The question is, how do we define the skill, behaviors, and attitudes that workers need to perform their role effectively? How do we know that they are qualified for the job? In other words, how do you know what to measure? Some people think formal education is a reliable measure. Others believe more in on-the-job training and years of experience. Others might argue that personal characteristics hold the key to effective work behaviors. All of these are important, but none seem sufficient to describe an ideal set of behaviors and traits needed for any particular role. Nor do they guarantee that individual will perform to the standard and level required by the organization. A more complete way of approaching this is to link individual performance to the goal of the business. To do this, many companies use what we call competencies framework. These are the integrated knowledge, skill, judgment, and attributes that people need to perform a job effectively. By having a defined set of competencies for each role in the business, it shows the worker the kind of observable behaviors that the organization will value and which is requires to help them to achieve their objective. Not only can your team members work more effectively and achieve their potential, but there are many business benefits to be had from linking personal performance with corporate goal and values. Defining these competencies are necessary for the success of our organization, and it can help us in doing the following: ensuring that our people demonstrate sufficient expertise, recruit and select new staff more effectively, evaluate performance more effectively, identify skills and competencies more effectively, provide more customized training and professional development, plan sufficiently for succession, and lastly, make change management process work more efficiently. How can we define the set of practice needed for effective performance? You can do this by adding a competency framework to your talent management program. By collecting and combining competency information, we can create a standard approach to performance that is clear and accessible to everyone in the organization. The framework outlines specifically what people need to do to be effective in their roles, and it is clearly established how their role relate to the organizational goal and success. This workshop outline the steps that you need to take to develop a competency framework in your organization. Designing a principle, what are the designing principle of a competency framework? A competency framework defines the knowledge, skill, and attitudes needed for people within the organization. Each individual role will have its own set of competencies needed to perform a job effectively. To develop this framework, you need to have an in-depth understanding of the role within the business. And to do this, we need to take few different approaches. First, use a preset of common standard competencies and then customize it to the specific need of our organization. Secondly, use outside consultant to develop the framework for you. Or third, create a general organizational framework and use it as the basis for other framework as needed. Developing a competency framework can take considerable effort. To make sure the framework is actually used as needed, it is important for us to make it relevant to the people who will be using it. So the people can take ownership of it. The following three principles are critical when we are designing a competency framework. The first one is involve the people doing the work. This framework should not be developed solely by the HR people, because HR people may not always know what each of the job actually involve. Nor should they be left to the managers, who might don't always understand exactly what each member of the staff does every day. To understand a role fully, you have to go to the source, the person doing the job, as well as getting a variety of input into what makes someone successful in that job. The second part is to communicate. People tend to get nervous about performance issues. Let them know why you are doing the framework, how it will be created, and how it will be useful for them. The more you communicate in advance, the easier your implementation will be. Third, only use relevant competencies. Ensure that the competencies you include apply to all the roles covered by the framework. If you include irrelevant competencies, people will probably have a hard time relating to the framework in general. For example, if you created a framework to cover the whole organizational, then financial management would not be included unless workers had to demonstrate that skill. However, a framework covering roles would almost certainly involve financial management competency. That would be the introduction to our session, our 4-day session, and we will actually explore more on how and what be the right way to develop a competency framework.